In the quiet town of Millbrook, Sarah Matthews stood at her kitchen window, her fingers tracing the rim of a worn coffee mug. The morning light cast long shadows across the worn linoleum floor, revealing the complexity of her inner turmoil. After receiving the mysterious letter from her long-lost grandmother, she felt a strange mixture of anticipation and fear. The letter had arrived 3 days ago, its weathered envelope bearing a postmark from a small village in northern Spain. Inside, delicate handwriting revealed fragments of a family story Sarah had never known existed. Her grandmother, Elena Rodriguez, wrote about a hidden family secret that had been carefully guarded for decades. Sarah's hands trembled slightly as she remembered the carefully worded passages. Something about a hidden treasure, a family heirloom that had been passed down through generations, but never revealed to anyone outside their closest circle. The letter hinted at a complex history involving her great-grandfather's involvement in the Spanish Civil War and a promise made during turbulent times. She had always known her family background was complicated. Her mother rarely spoke about their ancestors, and her father had passed away when she was young. Now, this single letter opened a door to a world she had never imagined. The instructions were clear. Sarah needed to travel to a specific coordinates in the Spanish countryside, near a small abandoned farmhouse. Her grandmother's letter contained a cryptic map and a series of numbered clues that seemed like a puzzle waiting to be solved. As she packed her small suitcase, Sarah couldn't help but feel a mix of excitement and nervousness. She had always been a practical person, working as an accountant in a small firm in Chicago. Adventure was not something that typically defined her life. Yet this mysterious invitation felt different. It felt like a calling. Her colleague, Mark, thought she was crazy. "You're going to travel thousands of miles based on a random letter?" he had asked, raising his eyebrows. But Sarah knew this was more than just a random adventure. This was about understanding her roots, about discovering a part of her family history that had been hidden for generations. The journey would not be easy. The coordinates pointed to a remote area in the mountainous region of Asturias, a place known for its rugged landscape and complex historical past. Sarah had quickly researched the area, learning about the Civil War's impact on small villages and families. Her grandmother's letter spoke of a wooden box, carefully hidden during a moment of great danger. The box supposedly contained documents, photographs, and possibly a valuable artifact that had significant historical importance. The exact nature of this treasure remained a mystery. As she boarded the plane to Madrid, Sarah felt a strange sense of destiny. The letter had arrived at a time when she felt stuck in her life. A routine job, no significant relationships, and a growing sense that something was missing. This unexpected journey represented a chance for transformation. The first leg of her trip would take her from the bustling streets of Madrid to the quieter, more traditional northern regions. She had packed light. Just a backpack with essential clothing, her grandmother's letter, a translated map, and a small notebook to document her discoveries. Her heart raced with a combination of fear and excitement. What would she find? Would the story her grandmother hinted at be as dramatic as the letter suggested, or was this simply an elaborate wild goose chase? Sarah knew one thing for certain. She was ready to uncover the truth. Whatever secrets her family had been keeping, whatever story had been hidden for generations, she was determined to understand. The journey ahead was uncertain, but her resolve was strong. As the plane lifted off from Chicago, leaving behind her familiar world, Sarah Matthews felt something she hadn't experienced in years, a sense of pure, unbridled possibility. The next chapter of her life was about to begin, and it started with a mysterious letter from a grandmother she had never truly known. In the quiet town of Millbrook, Sarah Thompson stood motionless, her hands trembling as she unfolded the old, weathered letter that would change everything she knew about her family's history. The yellowed paper crackled beneath her fingers, revealing a secret that had been buried for decades. The letter was from her grandmother Elizabeth, written just before her death, addressed to Sarah's father. Its contents were explosive. Elizabeth revealed that Sarah's grandfather, James, was not her biological father. Instead, a mysterious man named Michael Reynolds was her true biological parent, a man Sarah had never heard of before. The revelation hit Sarah like a sudden thunderbolt. Her entire understanding of her family's past crumbled in an instant. She learned that Michael Reynolds was a talented musician who had briefly been romantically involved with her grandmother during a summer music festival in 1962. Their relationship was passionate but short-lived, ending before Elizabeth discovered she was pregnant. Elizabeth had made a difficult choice. She decided to marry James Thompson, a kind and stable man who was willing to raise the child as his own. He never knew the truth, and Elizabeth took the secret to her grave. Only through this letter did Sarah now understand the complex web of love, sacrifice, and silent agreements that had shaped her existence. Sarah's mind raced with questions. Who was Michael Reynolds? Where was he now? Did he know he had a daughter he had never met? The letter provided few details, only mentioning that he was a pianist who traveled extensively, performing in concert halls across Europe and America. Determined to uncover the truth, Sarah began her investigation. She searched through old photographs, music archives, and contacted distant relatives who might remember Michael Reynolds. Her research was meticulous and patient, driven by an overwhelming desire to understand her roots. Weeks turned into months. Sarah discovered that Michael had been a renowned classical pianist in the 1960s, known for his remarkable performances of Chopin and Beethoven. He had toured internationally, receiving critical acclaim for his musical interpretations. However, tracking his current whereabouts proved challenging. Her breakthrough came unexpectedly. During a music festival in her hometown, she met an elderly music professor who recognized Michael's name. The professor shared that Michael had retired to a small coastal town in California, where he continued to teach piano and compose music. Sarah's heart raced with anticipation. After decades of silence, she was closer than ever to meeting the man who was her biological father. She carefully drafted a letter, explaining who she was and her desire to connect. The waiting was agonizing. Days passed, then weeks. Sarah wondered if Michael would even respond, or if he would reject the possibility of a relationship. Her adoptive father, James, had passed away years ago, so she felt no guilt about seeking her biological parent. Finally, a response arrived. Michael's letter was emotional and honest. He admitted that he had always wondered about the child he never knew. He explained that his nomadic lifestyle and dedication to music had made traditional family life impossible. Yet he expressed a genuine desire to meet Sarah and learn about her life. Their first meeting was surreal. In a quiet cafe overlooking the Pacific Ocean, Sarah and Michael recognized each other instantly. They shared similar mannerisms, the same slight curve in their smiles, and a mutual love for classical music. As they talked, Michael shared stories about his musical journey, his performances, and the passionate summer he spent with Elizabeth. Sarah listened, absorbing every detail of a history that had been hidden from her for so long. The revelation had transformed Sarah's understanding of herself. She was no longer just the daughter of James Thompson, but also the child of a passionate musician who had lived an extraordinary life. Her identity now felt more complete, more nuanced. Their connection was not perfect. Years of separation cannot be instantly bridged, but they had taken the first step towards understanding each other, towards healing the silence that had defined their relationship for decades. Sarah realized that some secrets, when finally revealed, do not destroy families, but can actually help them become more whole. In the quiet town of Millbrook, shadows lengthened as the final confrontation approached. Detective Sarah Morgan stood at the edge of her investigation, the pieces of a complex puzzle finally falling into place. The serial killer who had terrorized the community for months was closer than anyone realized. Jack Peterson, the unassuming librarian, had been carefully watching. His seemingly ordinary life masked a darkness that had been brewing for years. Sarah knew he was connected to the murders, but proving it would be her greatest challenge. The night was cold and damp. Streetlights flickered weakly, casting long shadows across empty streets. Sarah pulled her jacket tighter, her hand instinctively brushing against her holstered weapon. She had tracked Jack's movements for weeks, understanding his pattern, his method, his sick obsession. In the basement of an abandoned warehouse, Jack collected his trophies. Photographs, personal items, small tokens from each victim lined the walls. Each piece told a story of pain and terror. He believed he was creating art, preserving memories that nobody else could understand. Sarah's informant had finally given her the crucial piece of information. Jack wasn't just a random killer. He was methodical, selecting victims with a specific purpose. Each person represented something from his past, a memory he wanted to erase or relive. The investigation had consumed her. Sleepless nights, endless coffee, and mounting frustration had become her companions. Her colleagues thought she was becoming obsessed, but Sarah knew she was close to solving the case that had haunted Millbrook for months. As midnight approached, Sarah moved carefully. Her backup was positioned strategically around the warehouse. One wrong move could alert Jack, and she couldn't risk losing him now. Years of training had prepared her for this moment. Jack heard something. A slight creak, a movement too soft for most to detect. But he was different. His senses were sharp, honed by years of calculated planning. He knew someone was coming. The confrontation was inevitable. Sarah burst through the door, her weapon drawn. Jack stood perfectly still, surrounded by his disturbing collection of memories. For a moment, time seemed to stop. "It's over, Jack," Sarah called out, her voice steady and determined. He smiled. Not a cruel smile, but something more complex. A smile that suggested he had been waiting for this moment, preparing for this final act. The next few minutes would be crucial. Jack wasn't going to surrender easily. He had planned too long, hidden too carefully to give up now. But Sarah was equally prepared. Years of police work, of tracking the most dangerous criminals, had led her to this exact moment. Their eyes locked. A silent communication passed between hunter and hunted. Jack knew his time had come, but he wasn't finished. He had one last surprise waiting. The warehouse held secrets. Decades of pain, revenge, and twisted memories were about to be revealed. Sarah understood that this was more than just catching a killer. This was about understanding the darkness that could grow inside a human being. Jack's fingers moved slightly. Sarah's grip on her weapon tightened. One wrong move could change everything. The tension was unbearable. Years of investigation, months of tracking, countless sleepless nights had led to this single moment. The town of Millbrook held its breath, unaware that justice was about to be served. In the dim light of the warehouse, two figures stood ready. One representing law and order, the other embodying a darkness that had been carefully hidden for years. The final chapter of a long and terrible story was about to be written. The silence was broken. Movement happened. A confrontation that would change everything was about to unfold. Sarah took a step forward. Jack remained perfectly still. The reckoning had begun. The Mora ships cut through space like dark blades, their hulls absorbing light rather than reflecting it. They approached the small mining colony of Epsilon 9 in perfect formation. This was the 15th conquest this cycle, and Admiral Dak felt only boredom as he watched the tactical display. "Life signs?" he asked. "Approximately 3,000, Admiral," replied Officer Tuck, her claws clicking against the control panel. "Mostly miners and their families." Dak nodded. The Mora had terrorized the galaxy for centuries, moving from system to system, taking what they wanted and leaving broken worlds behind. No species had successfully resisted them. Their reputation alone often led to immediate surrender. "Standard approach." "No warnings," Dak ordered. On the colony below, Kim watched the sky darken as massive ships blocked the sun. He was only a maintenance worker, but everyone knew the stories of the Mora. They were the monsters parents used to frighten children into good behavior, except they were real. "Everyone to the shelters," Kim shouted, dropping his tools and running toward the colony center. People were already flooding the streets, some carrying belongings, others simply running with their children in their arms. The first plasma bolts hit before most could reach safety. Buildings vaporized. The air filled with screams and the smell of burning. Kim stumbled as the ground shook beneath him, then pushed himself up and continued running. From orbit, Dak watched with mild interest. Prepare landing parties. I want this completed before my evening meal. The Mora troops descended in sleek drop pods, each containing 10 heavily armed soldiers. They moved through the streets methodically, herding survivors toward the colony's main square. Those who resisted were killed immediately. The Mora had no use for defiance. By sunset, almost everyone still alive was kneeling in the square, surrounded by Mora troops. Commander Jin, leader of the ground forces, selected a prominent platform from which to address the captives. People of Epsilon 9, Jin's voice boomed through translators. Your world now belongs to the Mora Empire. You will work, you will obey, you will serve. Among the frightened colonists, a small family huddled together. Lee held his wife Sun close, their daughter Min between them. Min was only 4 years old, too young to understand why everyone was so afraid, why her father's hands trembled as he stroked her hair. Some of you will be taken to serve on our ships, Jin continued. Others will remain to extract resources from this world. Resistance means death. To demonstrate this point, Jin casually selected 3 colonists at random. They were dragged forward, forced to kneel before the assembled crowd, and executed with a single plasma blast each. The message was clear. Unknown to the Mora, a small transport ship had escaped during the initial attack. On board, Communications Officer Park desperately sent messages to any human outpost within range. Epsilon 9 has fallen to the Mora, he transmitted. Repeat, Epsilon 9 has fallen. Survivors being enslaved. Request immediate assistance. But Park knew help would come too late. The nearest human military outpost was days away. By then, the Mora would have stripped the colony of anything valuable and moved on, taking slaves with them and leaving the rest to starve on a ravaged world. Back in orbit, Admiral Dak received the initial report from the surface. Resistance minimal. Resource survey shows acceptable levels of rare metals. Estimate extraction complete in 40 days. Dak approved the report without reading beyond the first page. The Mora had performed this operation countless times on countless worlds. This human colony was no different from any other conquest. Set course for the next target after processing is complete, he ordered. Intelligence suggests another human settlement in the Hylia sector. His second-in-command nodded. The humans seem physically weak, Admiral. No natural defenses, no significant technological advantages. They are nothing, Dak agreed. Just another species to serve the glory of the Mora. As night fell on Epsilon 9, the colonists were divided into groups. Some were marched onto transport ships bound for Mora labor camps. Others were assigned immediate work shifts in the mines. Families were separated without ceremony or compassion. Lee and Sun fought desperately when soldiers tried to take Min. Their resistance earned them immediate execution, their bodies left in the square as a warning. Min was placed with other children, all destined for domestic service in Mora households. The Mora continued their efficient processing of the colony, unaware that their actions had been witnessed, recorded, and transmitted. Unaware that among the thousands of human worlds, word was spreading. Unaware that they had just made their first step toward a reckoning they could not imagine. The small colony of New Horizon was celebrating its 10th year of establishment when the Mora ships appeared in the sky. Unlike Epsilon 9, this colony had time to sound alarms. People rushed to emergency shelters as the colony's 3 outdated defense cannons fired uselessly at the massive black ships. Jaiho gripped his daughter's hand tightly as they ran through the crowded streets. Little Su-Jin was only 5 years old, her pink backpack bouncing as they hurried toward the nearest bunker. "Daddy, why are people crying?" Su-Jin asked, her round eyes watching the chaos around them. "Don't look, honey. Just keep running," Jaiho said, lifting her into his arms to move faster. They had almost reached the shelter when the first drop pods crashed into the colony center. More soldiers poured out, firing indiscriminately at fleeing colonists. Ji-ho ducked behind a supply shed, pressing Su-jin close against his chest. "Be very quiet," he whispered, "like when we play hide and seek." Su-jin nodded solemnly, clutching her favorite toy, a small stuffed dog named Star. From the command ship, Commander Rack watched the invasion progress with satisfaction. This was his first independent mission after serving under Admiral Dak for years. He intended to make an impression with his efficiency. "Sir, human resistance has been neutralized," reported his second-in-command. "We control the colony center and government buildings. Begin processing the population," Rack ordered. "I want them assembled in the main square within 1 hour." As soldiers swept through the residential areas, Ji-ho knew they couldn't stay hidden for long. He spotted a drainage tunnel that might lead outside the colony perimeter. "We need to crawl through there," he told Su-jin, pointing to the narrow opening. "Star has to go first to make sure it's safe." Su-jin looked doubtful, but nodded bravely. Ji-ho helped her into the tunnel, then followed behind. They had crawled about 20 meters when they heard heavy footsteps above. "Stop moving," Ji-ho whispered. The metal grate above them was suddenly ripped away. A soldier's face appeared, eyes glinting behind his helmet visor. Ji-ho pushed Su-jin behind him, but the soldier reached down with a clawed hand and dragged them both out. In the main square, the captured colonists stood in terrified silence as Commander Rack addressed them from a hovering platform. "Your resistance was futile," Rack announced, his voice amplified across the colony. "The Moor Empire now claims this world and everything on it, including you." The soldiers brought Ji-ho and Su-jin to the square, pushing them roughly into the crowd. Su-jin clutched Star tightly, tears streaming down her face, but making no sound. An older woman next to them tried to comfort Su-jin. "It will be okay, little one," she whispered, though her voice betrayed her doubt. Commander Rack had studied human psychology from previous conquests. He knew that to break their will completely, he needed to demonstrate absolute power in the most dramatic way possible. "Bring me a child," he ordered suddenly. The crowd gasped. Mothers clutched their children closer. Ji-ho pushed Su-jin behind him, trying to hide her in the press of bodies. But the Mora soldiers had already spotted Su-jin. 3 of them pushed through the crowd, seizing her despite Ji-ho's desperate attempts to fight them off. A soldier struck him with the butt of a plasma rifle, sending him crashing to the ground. "Daddy," Su-jin screamed as they carried her toward Rack's platform. She dropped Star, the stuffed toy landing in the dirt. Ji-ho struggled to his feet, blood streaming from his forehead. "Please, take me instead," he shouted. Rack ignored him. "Your species will learn the price of defiance," he announced as a soldier placed Su-jin on the platform beside him. "This demonstration will be broadcast to all human colonies within range." A technician activated the colony's communication system, hijacking it to transmit on all frequencies. The Moor had done this many times before, a public execution to break the spirit of the conquered. What made this different was that a small Earth patrol ship happened to be passing just outside the system. Lieutenant Yoon picked up the transmission by chance, deciding to record it as evidence of Moor activity in the sector. Su-jin stood trembling on the platform, looking desperately for her father in the crowd. "I want my daddy," she whimpered. Rack looked down at her with cold indifference. "Watch carefully," he told the assembled humans. "This is the cost of resistance. This is Mora justice." What happened next was witnessed not only by the colonists of New Horizon, but also recorded and eventually transmitted to every human settlement, military base, and ship throughout explored space. Lieutenant Yoon watched in horror, unable to intervene but ensuring every second was preserved. Ji-ho broke through the guards in a final desperate attempt to reach his daughter. He was cut down just meters from the platform. Su-jin screamed for her father as he fell. Rack completed his demonstration with methodical cruelty, believing he was simply following standard Mora protocol for subjugating a population. As the transmission ended, Lieutenant Yoon sat frozen at his console. Then, with shaking hands, he set course for the nearest Earth Fleet base at maximum speed. "They need to see this," he whispered to himself. "Everyone needs to see what they did." In the dirt of New Horizons' main square, the small stuffed dog named Star lay abandoned, the only witness to a moment that would change the galaxy forever.